I finally saw Godzilla Minus One about a month ago, and then I saw it again not that long ago because I wanted to catch it one last time in theaters where I am before I give my thoughts. A lot has been said about Godzilla Minus One. I don't really want to repeat what a lot of people have said. Um, there's definitely a lot of praise for the film. A lot of people really like it. I'll say I give it a lot of praise, and I will say it is a very well made film. I think we can all agree. There are. It's not perfect in my opinion. I don't want to be too controversial here. I'm sure someone's going to get annoyed with me. It's not a perfect film, but it's very well made. For a Toho Godzilla film, I think it's very very well made, and I think it's some of the best work they've done in a while. But also, they haven't made that many movies recently. Anyway, the last one was Shin Godzilla, but still really good, still amazing what they're doing these days compared to what they used to do in the early 2000s. Toho has come a long way. The film's not perfect in my opinion, and I'll get to that in a second, but I will say that it's just really cool to see the amount of praise it's getting overseas. I would never imagine that a Japanese, not an American Hollywood film, and a Japanese Godzilla film would cause such a stir at the American box office. The film itself I like the story a lot. I think the period piece setting is great, but especially watching the film the second time, I think I realized, in my opinion, why it works super well is that Godzilla Minus One, I think, the way I describe it, it's more of a war movie, a World War II movie, disguised as a giant monster movie, um, and I think that's why it works because it's mainly about soldiers who survived the Second World War on the Pacific theater and trying to deal with this monster just a few years later. Of course, the human characters are super well done. Our main lead, I think it's Koichi Shikishima. I don't know if I pronounced his name right. Really well done written character. Acting is really good as well. The actors did a really good job, but the characters are really enjoyable. Like we have Noda, the scientist guy. We have Noriko, Akiko, which is their little girl. We have the captain, which I forget his name, and then the young guy. But a great cast of characters. Usually, we never care about the human characters. Well, I actually like the human characters in some of the recent Godzilla films, like in the MonsterVerse films. I actually enjoy them. But in general, like nobody cares for the human characters. But in this case, like people love them, and they're really well done. So the human characters are great. So this is going to be spoiler heavy. So if you haven't seen the film, because maybe some regions didn't get Godzilla Minus One, I do apologize, but this is going to be spoilers. So the opening sequence is fantastic. The Odo Island sequence, like especially when I watched it the second time, I was like, this is great. The Odo Island sequence where Godzilla pre-mutation form attacks the soldiers and stuff, fantastic sequence. So great. Godzilla's terrifying in this moment. And I think it's interesting because, like, in some ways, when Godzilla is smaller, he's almost scarier because when you scale him down to the size of like a dinosaur, he's actually quite terrifying. Yeah, it was super cool to see this because it's like a remake of the sequence from Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, but it's the opposite. This time, Godzilla kills the Japanese soldiers instead of saving them. But also, rewatching the scene the second time, I realized Godzilla doesn't attack them until they shoot at him first. And then he attacks them. So Godzilla was just kind of acting in self-defense. I mean, he was attacking the island, but he wasn't attacking any people. He just only attacked them once they shot at him. But that's a great opening sequence. And then, I mean, I do feel like the film at some part, especially after that, starts to slow down a little bit. And it kind of drags on for a little while. But then the sequence when they first see Godzilla, when he like destroys the other minesweeper, and he's like chasing them, and they're trying to like shoot him with the mines. That's a fantastic sequence. That's a great sequence. And then the cow, I think, is whatever the other warship shows up, and Godzilla takes it out. That whole sequence is amazing. But when Godzilla's chasing them, when they're on the little boat, that's fantastic. That's like a really tense sequence, and it's so simple. And then Godzilla's attack on Tokyo and on Ginza, of course. That's honestly, it was a cool sequence and all, but I would say like I wished was a little longer. Like I will say one thing about this film is that's the only sequence we really see Godzilla destroy buildings of any kind. Like The rest of the movie, he's mainly in the water, sometimes walking on land, but actual city destruction, that's that one sequence. So that's one thing I do wish there was more of in this film. And then we have the final sequence at the end where they try and take out Godzilla with their special plan, uh, which is actually, watching it the second time, that's a really cool and intense sequence as well, especially when Godzilla's about to use his nuclear blast and then they like hit him with the bubbles and make him go down. Or at the end where like Godzilla is about to blast them again, but then Koichi, I think, comes in at the last second and saves them. But like I said, I think overall the film is really well made. I just wish it's a little slow in some parts. I really feel like the film's about 2 hours. You could probably cut about 15 minutes of it. Secondly, so the VFX, everyone's talking about the VFX, and again, I will say the VFX are really good for a Japanese Godzilla film. The VFX are really good. I think they're better even than Shin Godzilla. But I will say they're not perfect. A lot of people are giving them a lot of praise, but I won't lie. My opinion, the VFX is not perfect either in this film. There's some shots, especially when Godzilla, like full body shots of Godzilla walking on the ground, I guess, not in the water. When he's just walking around, that look really kind of silly. Like the way his body moves while he walks. I feel like Shin Godzilla had a similar problem. I don't think Toho has still, their VFX artists have yet nailed making Godzilla walk, like a full wide shot of Godzilla walking, look good yet, compared to how Legendary has done it. Godzilla walking around, full body shot, he's just like, the way his body shakes and jiggles, it just looks kind of funny. But the close-up shots look beautiful. And Godzilla in the water looks great. It's just some of those shots when he's walking around on land. But for the most part, the visual effects are really good. They're really good. I'm being honest because, you know, I do feel like people are praising this film. And again, there are some things to praise, but at the same time, I have to be honest that there were some things that, you know, the film's not perfect. It's pretty good, though. And I think it's definitely one of Toho's best Godzilla films they've made, especially in the modern era. I like Shin Godzilla. You know, that film can be divisive, especially for like some G fans outside of Japan. But I like Shin Godzilla quite a bit. It's not like my favorite film or anything, but I liked it. I saw it twice in theaters. I thought Shin Godzilla was quite good, but I won't lie. Like there are some things that Godzilla Minus One does a lot better. I think the human characters are more interesting. I like the human characters in Shin Godzilla. Don't get me wrong, but I think they're more interesting in Godzilla Minus One. I like the Godzilla better, the design better, the story, everything. I like the Godzilla better. Because Shin Godzilla is like creepy and weird, but it's almost like too much. It's interesting for one movie, but I like Godzilla Minus One because he's more classic. He's like the original Godzilla. I do like how much city destruction there is in Shin Godzilla. I think that's great. I think Shin Godzilla's sequence of destroying half of Tokyo, that was cool. And there was more city destruction than in Godzilla Minus One. But the human characters are much better in Godzilla Minus One, right? Like in Shin Godzilla, you have a team of people that are trying to stop Godzilla. Whereas here you have a man who's basically out for revenge against this creature that has kind of been haunting him this whole film, right? Like that's kind of the plot of the movie. It's his story. It's him versus Godzilla, basically. So I think that's why it works so well, because it feels so personal. In other films, it's like a group of humans trying to stop Godzilla, but they're trying to stop him like he's a big threat, like very far away, removed from them. But in this case, Godzilla is a very personal threat to him, to Koichi. And, you know, he feels very personally motivated to stop Godzilla. So that's why I think the story works really well. That's why people really like the characters. And again, of course, the visuals are amazing. I know the black and white version is coming out soon, and I think is actually going to come out North American theaters as well, apparently they announced. But, and I'm not sure if it's going to come out in other regions. I don't know. I mean, I saw it twice already in theaters, so I feel pretty good about it at this point. I don't know if I really need to see it in black and white. And to be fair, I actually, like, watching it the second time, the visuals are really pretty in color. I like those wide shots of the ocean with the blue water in the sky and everything, and Godzilla's blue blast. I don't know that the film would look as good in black and white. So I don't know if I really would care much to see it. The original film was cool in black and white because a lot of the scenes take place at night, which looks really scary and foreboding. Like black and white at night looks really cool, but a lot of the action in Godzilla Minus One takes place during the day. Like all the main action sequences with Godzilla, except the very first sequence. Maybe that part but the rest of the sequences with Godzilla take place during the day. So I don't think it would look as cool in black and white. And I think the colors in this film are really cool. So I personally, for me, it's kind of a neat, it feels more like a gimmick to get people to see it again. But it's cool, I guess. I don't know. I think if you're like, oh, but it's like the original film was in black and white. In that sense, if that's why you want to see it, cool, go ahead. But for me, it's kind of like, all right, I just watched the original film, which was in black and white. Now, overall, those are my thoughts on Godzilla Minus One. I know this is a film that a lot of people are going to talk about for a long time, and people are going to say, oh, is it one of the best Godzilla films ever? Being in this fandom for so long, I've learned to stop caring what the best Godzilla film ever is, and I just care about the Godzilla films that I enjoy the most. Also, I'm already seeing people being like, "Oh, forget the MonsterVerse. Toho is better." Blah blah blah. That kind of nonsense, and I'm just like, I think was it Luis Duran who put it best that regardless of how you feel about the MonsterVerse, just be grateful that we're getting Godzilla content because you know you don't know when it'll be another long break in Godzilla content, and I agree because this is like great right now. But how long is this going to last? It's best to just be grateful you're getting Godzilla movies and shows. And instead of trying to be like, oh, this is better than that, blah, 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 I don't like this. I mean, just enjoy it. Enjoy it while it lasts. And I agree. And I'm looking forward to Godzilla X Kong. And I've seen now that everybody's getting the figures. At least in the US, a lot of the figures have been released. So it's cool to see all the. They've unveiled a lot of the monsters and stuff from the movie. So I'm looking forward to seeing them on the big screen. I'm looking forward to the film. I'm almost done with Legacy of Monsters. I'm actually liking these last couple episodes, so I'm looking forward to Godzilla X Kong. It's gonna probably be a fun, silly film. I don't expect it to be anything like Godzilla Minus One, and I don't really care. That's fine. That's not what I'm expecting from a MonsterVerse Godzilla X Kong movie. So, anyway, those were kind of my thoughts on Minus One. I wanted to keep them hopefully quick and short. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's a well-made film. But you guys can debate if you think it's the best Godzilla movie ever. I'm not gonna. That's not for me to decide.